Hello there, and welcome to Pocket Isekai. For those who don't know, I got into doll making because I wanted dolls of all of my favorite characters from the 90s anime and manga series Magic Knight Rayearth. Specifically, I wanted to make a doll of Ryuzaki Umi, who is not only my favorite character from the series, but probably my favorite character of all time. And while I plan to make most of her outfits from Clamp's artwork, I decided to start with my favorite. This cute, casual outfit from the Rayearth title page in the May 1994 issue of Nakayoshi. Since I currently only have 2 face sculpts, it's probably no surprise that I used Mora for Umi. But as you may gather from Mora's eye shape, I did sculpt this particular face with Clamp's Rayearth artwork in mind. I started out by sketching in the eye and eyebrow shapes with a blue watercolor pencil. This being my first attempt at a face-up, I was trying to keep my expectations moderate. Umi is supposed to be absolutely gorgeous, and I wasn't expecting to reach that level of beauty on the first try. Once I was happy enough with the sketch, I painted in the eye shape with turquoise acrylic to give a tint to the edges of the brown-black I was planning to follow it with, because I always loved Clamp's artwork where the line art for the girls matched their main character color. One of the things I love about the Rayearth series is how Clamp does their usual subversion of expectations. Umi is introduced as a student of a prestigious private school that caters to the daughters of wealthy business elite and politicians. Stereotypes would say that she would be rude and selfish. And she is rude. She uses blunt Japanese with absolutely no honorifics. But nearly as soon as the girls are pulled into the other world, her main concern is not herself. She's worried about missing her fencing tournament because she would be letting down her fencing club if she wasn't there to represent their school. Her teammates are counting on her, and she doesn't want to let them down. And as the series progresses, we see her do her best to support Hikaru and Fu through their perilous quest. I painted the brows in turquoise. It was at this point that I kind of wished I had started with a layer of pastel rather than the harsh lines of pencil and paint, so her eyebrows were a little bit softer. After sealing in the paintwork with a layer of varnish, I started blushing the face with some soft pinks and reds. This was my very first time seeing the face blushed. And even if my first face-up isn't exactly what I hoped it would be, I absolutely love how this sculpt looks with more color. I then painted the lips with a soft warm tone, and decided to stop there. I have a few ideas of what I can do to improve in the future, but for what is essentially my very first face-up, I think it turned out quite well. The eyes have given me some trouble from the start. I tried to do the trick where you mix the resin and the pigment into the mold to avoid resin wastage. But I didn't manage to get it nearly mixed enough and just ended up with a sticky, uncured mess that I had to throw away. And then, when I started the next set, I was a little too gentle with the pigment and ended up with a sclera that doesn't even show up when it's in the doll's face. And I had to redo them all over again. Look at what a difference the level of white pigment makes when it comes to the eyes showing up inside the faceplate. I should have known they were wrong by how translucent they were to start with. But most frustratingly, it wasn't until I had made the third set that I realized that I was using the wrong molds and the eyes were too big and didn't quite fit in the face. So I'm going to have to remake them again. But that's for another day. For now, these are good enough. I decided to try my hand at making a hot glue wig rather than using some form of PVA. While this is my first fully custom doll, this is not my first attempt at making a doll wig. In my previous attempts, I struggled so much with getting glue so many places I did not want it that I hoped hot glue with its quick cure time would help. Wrapping one of my heads in cling film, I wrapped it again with 2 pieces of tight material, and then I shaped the fabric around the ears and face with some thread in a similar color to the fiber that I was planning to use. I then marked the hairline and filled in the scalp with hot glue, using the tip of my glue gun to smooth it over. I then cut the cap out and covered the head in washi tape before I placed it back on. Cutting small sections out of the locks, I gently melted them into the wig cap with the nozzle of the hot glue gun, starting at the back of the head and working my way up and then around the head. I decided to go with alpaca for Umi's hair because I wanted it to have the same long, silky flow of the artwork. I dyed the locks a pastel turquoise because I always liked the image of Umi's hair toned more turquoise than blue. And with the variation in the artwork colors, there is a large amount of wiggle room in what counts as canonically accurate. Is Umi's uniform blue or black? Is her necktie orange or yellow, or maybe it's just blue? All of these are options, all of them are correct. Even so, I still might make her a blue wig at some point, because I plan to make her multiple wigs so I can have several different hairstyle options to choose from. Unfortunately, I did get really into the wig making process and completely failed to film the final half of the weft application and cutting the parting line to insert hair through from the inside. All in all, it was so much faster, and for me it was so much cleaner than making a wig with PVA that I plan to make the majority of my wigs with hot glue going forward. When I decided to make Umi as my first doll, I considered putting her in her iconic school uniform and armor combo, or her Magic Knight armor. But I don't love them nearly as much as I love this outfit. It's not just the outfit itself though, but the juxtaposition of it with Fu and Hikaru's outfits from the same illustration. They're both wearing cute skirts and look like they're ready for a little spring picnic, while Umi looks like she's ready for a long hike with her backpack and canteen. For Umi's top, I decided to go with a basic raglan style t-shirt. I cut the pieces out of some lightweight white knit, and I started out sewing it together with the sewing machine. Our main sewing machine, unfortunately, is out for the count and is pending a replacement. So I pulled out our backup machine. The backup machine is a mini thing that doesn't even have a light, and it won't take any of the special feet we have for the main one that make various fabrics easier to sew. And knit isn't necessarily easy to sew on a machine that I know well, and it was even more difficult on this one. I got a nice hem on the cuffs and a reasonably nice top stitch around the collar before it was annoying me enough I stitched the side seams and hem by hand. I debated on sewing the back shut, but getting a closed shirt on her would require taking her head off every time I wanted to put it on, and I'm not going to do that. So I chose to put snaps on it instead. Once I was finished sewing, I then dug through our craft room and found our one set of capital letter stamps, which would make one part of putting this design on the t-shirt easier. For the crown, I decided to carve a stamp out of an old eraser. After measuring the letters for clamp, I marked that width on the eraser, and then measured 4 sections across the bottom, and then for the 4 points across the top, before cutting it out. It took several tries of stamping the stamp on a piece of paper and recutting it before I was completely happy with the shape. Only for me to then decide to stamp the crown on the t-shirt a second time and completely ruin the shape that I had spent so long cutting out. I may remake this shirt in the future, but at the moment it kind of looks like a craft Umi might have done herself. And since she canonically cannot sew, she might not be that good at painting on a shirt either. For the shorts, I cut fabric from an old pair of my leggings, and that's basically all the footage I have. I have somehow lost the footage of the sewing machine eating the first pair of shorts, and then I made the second pair by hand off camera out of frustration. It's just a very simple pair of bike shorts. You're not really missing anything. I know that in the artwork I am referencing, Umi's socks are more of a reddish color, but the only ribbed knit fabric I had in my stash was an old purple shirt. And I think purple would look really cute with this outfit. So I cut out my knee sock pattern and I finished the top edge with a blanket stitch and then folded it over so there would be no hem showing when it was scrunched down. Then I sewed the entire seam shut with the same blanket stitch. For the jacket, I found a nice lightweight nylon at my local fabric shop in the color that I wanted. It was a bit more translucent than I would have liked, so I decided to flatline it with the same polyester satin I had planned to line it with. Unfortunately, this choice led to more sewing frustration because both the polyester and the nylon were super slippery, and I had to baste every single piece together before I sewed it. The little sewing machine performed adequately, as long as everything was secured enough that it wouldn't wiggle out of place. But due to neither fabric staying particularly well pressed, I did give myself the added struggle of top stitching every seam so it would lie flat. And then I top stitched around the entire jacket, before going back and sewing a second row of top stitching around the bottom hem and the hood to create channels for elastic. Using a tapestry needle, I sewed the elastic cord through the channels and then tied it off at what I felt was a correct length. I did scour the internet for a little globe stamp the right size to put the little logo on the jacket, but I couldn't find one I liked. It still looks super cute how it is. While I do want to learn to make all sorts of doll shoes, including athletic shoes, today was not the day I was going to start. Instead, I decided to go easy on myself and just customize a pair of Shadow High shoes. This particular pair originally belonged to Oliver Ocean, which amuses me probably more than it should. I removed the original laces and then painted the details in a very similar way to the art image. It took 3 coats to make the color even. I then replaced the laces with yellow waxed beading cord. I really like the result. Because I've made the body anatomically accurate and blushed it accordingly, I decided to dress Umi in her shorts and shirt before turning on the camera. I will say it does feel kind of weird to pull her feet off so I can more easily shove them into the shoes, but you do what you have to do, and that is the benefit of having magnetic feet. I think I might make some spare feet that can just live in these shoes so I can pop them off and on without having to take her feet in and out of them. But that's for another day. The socks unfortunately did not scrunch up the way I was hoping, so I'll probably have to play around with a few different shapes to accomplish the style I'm after. In the art book image, Umi's sleeves stick out from the cuffs of the jacket. To achieve this, I took my hemostats and reached through the jacket sleeve to pull the shirt sleeve through with Umi's arm. It was definitely easier to accomplish with the first arm than it was with the second. Once she was dressed, there was the final touch to the outfit. In the art, Umi has a simple tied black headband, and I couldn't find my black ribbon, so I decided to use a purple that matches her socks. And with that, she is done.